Okay, so I recorded another batch of Mac and Me analysis last night. I haven't edited it yet, but my recollection is that it was fairly uneventful. But anyway, because it was kind of a short analysis, mostly kind of legwork of like moving through some connecting scenes, I wanted to do a little bit more analysis on this first stack and sort of attach it to it because there's just a whole lot more to see here that we didn't note through the first time. And so anyway, after we look at this stuff we've already looked at in a little bit more detail, this will cut into the analysis that advances us in the timeline a little bit. So anyway, I just wanted to go through it very, very slowly now. A problem with being too self-conscious about this kind of work is that I don't want to seem too weird by moving too slowly and focusing on all these really tiny little things, but then I miss very important stuff. Like this, for instance. Let's just pick it up right here. So a little while later in this stack, we are taught that this object, which remember it's an aluminum metal element that is divided like this. It's a little mandala, but it's stretched in such a way to imply maybe two rectangles, kind of like this. Well, okay, now I'm starting to notice really a very peculiar thing. Because I've just replicated the visual structure of that. Oh, here, I'll draw it more over here. Right? Isn't this what we see on the weird wall that's stamped with the red light? It's an E. Right? That's taking this one rectangle that already has the implication of a division in it. It's clear what we're doing here. I'll attach it like that. And then we're breaking it into two. So that's the motion that happens here. It really does occur to me that if we rotate that element 90 degrees, we get this weird W thing, which the film reinforces later on in an image that has red and blue on their correct locations as well. See, I think maybe this all relates to Mac's hand, which has 3 fingers and a thumb. So is that the red right hand? E also works out to 5. Which we were noting last time is just a single visual operation away from being a 6. One way to view a 5 is as an impartial 6, right? Also, of course, we could read this as a 3, sort of reversed. And there's also like an M in Mac. There's just many strange connections here. But in any case, Mac's hand keeps falling on this side of it. But even before that happens, we first view this element in the context of a correctly handed, diagonalized match. There's our North Tower. There's our red car on the south. The red car is going to be important because this returns in a related stack later on in the film, which we'll get to probably many episodes down the line. It's quite a ways forward in the timeline, I'm afraid. But anyway, and then what happens is that this red car falls on this side of that element. Right? It parts that way. Just as that occurs, just as we get our nice red element parting to the left, a blue car appears. And the blue car parts just very perfectly to the right. So our red moves to the left. Our blue moves to the right, with this as the divider. This is Benkins and Store and More. These are the storage companies. Relates to moving. It's kind of interesting, like moving houses. Interesting the way he's laid out there. And recall also that, you know, what we just saw there is an interesting tendency. We had a red object move in that direction. We have here, I'll actually make this with correct colors. And we have a blue object heading in that direction. And we have our nice horizontally segmented double rectangles in the middle. But this exists in parallel with another structure that replicates this, which was the positioning of the people in the car, right? Here's the dad with the hat, and here's the kid with the red hair. That's diagonalized and correctly handed. This is correctly handed, and contains within it, I won't bother to draw it, I'll just paste it in up there, a momentary, oh, Siri, I was not trying to talk to you. Paste it, or whatever it is I said, made Siri think I was talking to her. No, stop it. Go away. God, that's annoying. Maybe I should turn that off. Anyway, what I was trying to say is this contains a momentary, but nevertheless quite strong handed match within it as well. So that's quite a lot right away, I would say. Oops, I don't do that. That rainbow halo there as well. Connects potentially to the Skittles wrapper that we see later. Okay, now here's the next part of this that I think is really quite strange. I do find this pretty Atomic Kid resonant, you know, the yellow hat there, in the correct location relative to the aluminum grilling on the truck we see there, which does actually have a very clear antenna. Now, what I think is very interesting about this is the similarity between this vehicle and this vehicle. They're really quite similar. First of all, they're both trucks. They both have the same color scheme, which is brown and cream. Same color scheme. Not only is the color scheme the same, but the sort of the color pattern is the same, right? It has this cream element in the middle, surrounded by brown on the top and bottom. And this one has a cream top. This one has a brown top. So, you know, they're not the same truck. They're slightly different. However, they have the same overall design, essentially. So, same color, and I'm just going to say same sort of colored design, you know. This one has the back on it. This one has the back removed. But gosh, I think they're very close. You can really see how close they are here. These are very, very similar vehicles. that have piled up together. So I think that's strange because it's like a twin thing that's happened suddenly. And a twin thing that involves noticing a similarity between very close but not identical types of vehicle. Now, I find that significant, of course, because in the tableau we get just moments later, we have this very strange correspondence between some kind of 80s vehicle that I don't think is a DeLorean, but I mean, look at the design of it. Again, it's so similar to that car. I want to say some things about this, but there are many other properties of this tableau I want to note. So let's just watch it occur in real time here. And I'll do a little bit of drawing on top of it this time. I'm interested in that logo, by the way. I'm not sure what that is. If anybody knows cars better than me, what is that? So we have a car crash involving two cars that are like twin cars that then lands in such a way at the end to generate twin shining lights that also has a mirror very prominently placed in the frame. You know, it cuts into a handed match with our redhead here and our now de-hatted but still Logos resonating father on the right-hand side of the image. We'll also form a bit of a pair of red twins, though, because the kid has a red shirt and so does the dad underneath the blue shirt. This calculus gets complicated. I find particularly the Coke can difficult to think about because it's such a strong North Tower resonator in the way that it has that little straw, and it's red, but it's red. So as a red object, you think it might want to appear over here, but because it's also aluminum and because it has this little choop, I think overall it's more of a South Tower resonator. Okay, so this is the dad now, running over here to assist in the crash. Something I completely missed is this figure. I find this figure quite fascinating because of the, the strength of those glasses there. Well, he's got a huge, very visible visor, I would say. Wristwatch. That's not so unusual. Almost everybody had wristwatches, but it's quite visible in the frame. It's a little hard to see here. We'll see it more clearly when he runs into correct alignment. But he also has on black boots. So white shirt, dark pants, black boots. So it's also an alternating black-white pattern, which is one of the properties we noted about the projection space surrounding the North Tower, right? So overall, I find this guy to be very North Tower resonant. He brings in the sign of his birth here, the sunglasses. And these other aspects of the vector, like the black and white look and the clock. We pan over here, first of all, to understand the relationship of this two-car pile-up to this image. That's why last time I took a snapshot of this and then brought it into the tableau here so we can see how that all connects. So they're yelling about fire extinguishers, and this guy appears in his red hat, which I think completes our red twin's signature for this tableau, along with the red-headed kid. This is an interesting thing. It does rather remind me of a Freemasonic logo, although I think maybe it's actually a baseball thing. I have no idea. So this guy's still hanging around here, and now he runs to exist in alignment with this antenna, just as the mom introduces this element. Remember also there's actually fire in here right now. So we have legs, fire, an explosion that happens in real time coming out of this metal canister that then is also in alignment with the antenna, which then moves into alignment with this strong North Tower resonator with the visor and all the rest of the properties. Here he goes. You can really get a glimpse of his boots there, which I think links it very strongly also to arachnophobia, because he's the skeptic there, but he has a hose like this and also has boots like this. But also, of course, to the Ghostbusters, who also spend a lot of time covered in material like this. So I really think those 80s properties are orbiting around here in a strange, unconscious way. Okay, so we actually... that's all we get. The next time we go back to that scene, this guy has disappeared, never to be found. But the last frame of it we have there, all of that is just in perfect alignment together. Strong antenna, visor, the color pattern, black and white like the antenna, the aluminum tank, and then of course, okay, so that's the North Tower. Then of course our South Tower with the legs and the maybe kind of sexualized explosion, and also the flames and the two cars that crashed into it. And then the fact you see that this is sort of also contains a little picture of Back to the Future, because I really think this, they focused on these Nikes with the double red swooshes very early on in the marketing material for Back to the Future. The very first teaser for the film, before we even see Michael J. Fox, we see the white Nikes with red elements. I don't know, something about this guy's pose. There's the wristwatch. We're like looking at a profile image of the Back to the Future poster, you know what I mean? Which has just dropped suddenly into space-time along with this other big thing that replicates the same properties in that poster and also the same properties that we see in many tableaus in that film. So two things are achieved at once there. You see it links it into Back to the Future specifically as a myth. So it imports a whole lot of strange structure there potentially. But it also is just marking this as a content that's out of time, because this is a time machine. A strange time machine that appears maybe accidentally in the ground that has already been set up a few moments before by a correspondence between two very similarly shaped vehicles that get into a crash together, right adjacently and in the correct position, in fact, relative to this tableau. And then this is over here. Wow! That's quite a lot, actually, going on here. Now it teaches us that it's a handed match. The thing is over here. It's because Mac's head is about to appear over here, I guess. That's why they framed it that way. Again, over here. It's also another thing that links it into this other materials. Like, so many of these tableaus appear along with people looking shocked and amazed like this. It really allows this material to cut together in sync films in a very weird and nice way. But it's strange, that property, I think. His eyes just going nuts. It's like he's orientationally confused, but that isn't. Okay, now we go back here. This guy's already disappeared. We do get two very nicely placed double red flames there for a moment, at least. Now, it is his left hand on fire. So that's not so aligned. The red X. That is definitely a rising symbol in this. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a second. I was trying to suggest in this section in the last video the degree to which this content is now so complicated is not even the word, just beautifully interconnected that it's very hard to even talk about it. So it's like the picture is kind of encroaching, you know. But this frame evokes so many things at the same time to me that all work together in such a strange, perfect way. God, what a weird picture. How is any of that happening? This foam stuff. I wonder if it wasn't, in fact, on some level, like a cynical kind of, we'll just remind people of different 80s movies in our terrible 80s knockoff movie. Like, surely the sunglasses that the brother wears, that whole thing, it's like beat for beat copied out of They Live, you know? This is really, really similar. So stuff like that has to be deliberate. One wonders about the weird Phantom DeLorean and the, you know, sudden, it's kind of like Ghostbusters, like foam blast. And like, you know, are those things actually on some barely disguised level explicit references to those properties? You know, I don't know. I'm not making sense there. A disguised thing wouldn't be explicit, but you know what I mean? Like on some level in the production, was it explicit at some point to somebody? Someone had a conscious thought, let's import this scene from this movie here. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think so. Probably it's because the rest of this stuff just can't be explained that way at all. His hand really stays on that side. I want to emphasize that. It really, really stays just on that side the entire time. This kid stays on this side the entire time. We never see him over there. He looks over there. It's, you know, it's very precisely constellated. Then we get this thing with 261s. I'm just going to call it like I see it. 261s going by. I shouldn't say, you know, perhaps it's significant that it's a 51 and not a 61. I don't know how any of this is working. I just find it so strangely, uncannily close. And, you know, on a fire truck, after everything we've seen, that then manages to exist in space with more of these segmented rectangles, blinds on the window, and just that design on the van. Okay, things happen here that I noted. This is a little slow for me here. Let's pick it up to 0.5 now. I find it very significant that Mac pops up just when Eric thinks it might be fun to get out of the car and watch some carnage take place. Aha. We, in fact, do have a sustained red twins pattern here. Because the Coke can is just perfectly reflected in the mirror.
What? An alien driving under the influence.
2 police officers here. 2 guys in red shirts here.
Bring it up, bring it up.
So I think, it's weird, I think that's actually a reflection of that same sign we saw before that said Store and More and Benwick's, whatever the storage thing on it. That shines really brightly. Caught very perfectly in the reflections here. Look how perfectly that lights up. So I noted this as well in the images, you know.
Yeah, right.
We get 151, the flames, and then 1 red light, another red light. The next thing I'm interested in is what happens when Mac wakes up here from his dream, but it's more of a vision, right? Because he's seeing his family. I suppose maybe that's his sister, wandering around the desert. Starving because they have no Coke.
Thanks.
Mac's first glimpse of the human world in daylight. He's looking out through these blinds. And we did notice this last time, but I want to add in some extra precision here. We noted that he was looking, you know, kind of the first thing he's interested in. Oh, there's this red car showing up again. Is this building with the red element on top. Well, actually, if you look closely, this is a Hilton hotel. In fact, now the Hilton logo has been through many, just to prove that that is Hilton, there's the HILTON. And here's the old Hilton logo, which was just basically two red stylized streaks, you know, meant to be parts of the H. At various times, I had the H connected or disconnected. At this point in time in the 1980s, I think this was the logo. So Mac is looking at a building symbolically on fire that is also a hotel that is also emblazoned with the symbol of the constellation, i.e. the red twins themselves. That later in time, although Mac, well, maybe Mac does know this because he's an alien connected to the forever. But later in time, this logo becomes something that looks like this. It's like two rectangles with a vortex spiraling around it. So, yeah, that's what's happening here. We have a little replication of it down here. Isn't that funny? It moves behind the tree, and then that's it. So he's really looking at that hotel, it seems. So it's like the first thing we see Mac interested in, but then remember what we see him interested in later. Now we get our weird... Dun 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 dun. It's just one or two. It's one note and some slightly different phrasing away. You know, right? It's this very odd sort of Twin Pinesy thing appears over there. Strange. I mean, can you blame Silvestri? He's looking at these images. It looks like Back to the Future, so I guess it's no wonder that it sort of starts coming out in his score, but wow, it adds up to a strange movie. Incidentally, if you watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode on Mac and Me, it's the first episode in the new season. Many of the jokes they make are referencing exactly the same things we're noticing here. I mean, they make fun of this thing as the Back to the Future van. I think they talk about this. They say it's like the Karate Kid town or something. Like they're referencing adjacent 80s properties, in the same way. I'm pretty sure they noticed that thing with Mac. Like, they make a joke about Mac getting excited about Eric wanting to watch the car accident, All kinds of weird things are surfacing in that. In a comedic context, but if you read it in a slightly different context, it's all this interesting unconscious material still. My little joke about the pretty nice is actually a reference to the Mystery Science episode where they they do that as well. It really is hysterical. Well, so anyway, just continuing here, what I was saying is that later, just a little while later, once we arrive in the bedroom.
Great. Okay, we're almost here. Close your eyes. Tweet.
Okay, come on, what's happening here? Later, Mac becomes very interested in this picture. And you might say, okay, well, what's the connection? Well, first of all, it does have a quite visible signature, which, by the way, does fall in such a way to suggest an overall handedness. If we were to draw a bounding box around that signature, it touches the left frame and not the right frame. This reminds me very much of the image of the two red barns that appears in the 9/11 feast at the Bates's dinner. But also, of course, we have a giant double red X referentially implied by the Dos Equis logo. And then, so we're going to skip around the film a little bit non-linearly now, but then later on, Mac becomes very interested in a third image, which we actually see positioned very kind of explicitly next to that first image of the family. Let's see if I can find it here. I don't know if you caught there that yes, that very same episode of the Snorks and that very same frame is playing on the TV during this scene as well. Here it is. Okay, we're just going to play it and we'll catch it as it goes by. Right? This is some like newspaper clipping that Mac has cut, that he's selected. Only Wix Furniture has 3 tough guarantees. That slogan is burned into my mind forever. I don't know what it means, but there is something strange about it. And here we have this image. We get it positioned like in proximity with this image. And look, it has a correctly handed element again. And it's a red-blue sort of hemispheric image again. While that episode of the Snorks is playing on the TV again, that itself is a weirdly corrected. We'll look at that again in a second, probably. Well, so anyway, okay, we skipped, we cheated a little bit by skipping forward in the movie. I don't want to go any farther here because there are really hilarious things that happen following that. But so, okay, we're in this scene again. I said we were going to look at this again. Let's just take a look at it real quick. Well, one thing I wanted to note is that in this little crop of the of the Fort K toy, well, here, let's actually try to locate the image. I wanted to look at this a little more closely. Sorry, I'm using like a slightly low resolution scan of this. I'm profoundly lazy and don't want to go hunting for it. But first thing I want to note, of course, is that we do kind of have a sense of a rectangle and another rectangle. One of them has an explosion. One is the aluminum one that also has the guy in a hat and a jagged mouth there. So, you know, add those things up over here. You have aluminum, you have a funny hat, you have a jagged mouth, and then adjacent to it you have the explosion, which is also an explosion that's kind of implied to be coming out of someone's head who's green, like the Fool. So there's also another weird mouth over here. Cropped it a little bit funny here, but so it's inverted aluminum, but it's a very powerful match that I think is made even more powerful because of how closely it replicates the color structure here. Because we also have a red element and a green element, just like this person's green head, this alien's green head. And this is something I've been noticing about atomic kid resonators, is that we see a lot of orange and red and white, which is what we see here precisely. But also sometimes we see a little green, particularly of a kind of yellow-green toxic slime or kind of neon sort of color. Sometimes that seems to appear, and it appears in the arachnophobia material, in that amazing handed match that constitutes the logo on John Goodman's character's truck. You know. Also, okay. Apologies, all these thoughts are maybe a bit disconnected. We're at the stage here where we're just trying to sort of note all of these amazing details. It appears, of course, on the side. We know this already. And so it's actually that explosion, which itself constitutes a handed match, that then sends this phantom transmission. So this is a transmission that Mac has selected, I would assume, in a similar way to how he selected the Wix furniture material, and in a similar way to how he points at the sign of his birth on the family portrait. We need a better name for that. That's one for the museum, you know. It's a tree growing out of the head and the handed match. Not sure what to call it yet. So, okay, here's our first cut. And it is notable that in our very first instance of it there, we do have some kind of an explosion going on. We're seeing it happen right here, right? It's like they're kind of freaking out there in some kind of a tussle. And again, you're thinking back to the projection space, like it's a weird animal and like a weird green kid. It's like the atomic kid. It's green ooze instead of nuclear power, but it's the same basic type. And paired here with the, it's similar to the way the Hellraiser material fractalizes with the television set itself. See how it finds a different way to express itself here. I don't know how, closely people are following this stuff, but in the Hellraiser analysis, I made the argument that well, there was just an aspect of how a lot of TVs are made that controls appear over here and then logos appear over here. So there was a logo over here with a yellow element. I said that's like the explosion, and then there are a bunch of controls and dials and so on over here. I said that was like this, like the North Tower communication aspect. So that's what made up one of the fractal layers of handedness in this particular Hellraiser 3 image. Here, though, this TV is of a different design. The controls just run continuously along the bottom, yet somehow it still finds a way to conform to this anyway. By having a yellow 3, i.e. maybe a snake, i.e. like a weird animal in something close to the color space that in the fractal context here is quite readable. And then on the other side, we have the Zenith logo, which is made out of a Z that's stylized to be like a lightning bolt. So we have not only the North Tower, but the North Tower struck. Interesting that we have a spiral here as well. Okay, then we get this image, which is just a close-up. This is another character in another shot that conforms to this structure. This starts conforming to the structure. Here we have a nice sort of image of the twins, This tells us we're looking at the pillars. So this really is an image of the red twins, because we have a red kid and a red animal. So it's complex. It's an atomic kid image that's placed symmetrically between the twins that itself consists of a union between something human, something alien, and something animal that also is an image of the red twins. Wow. Quite an impressive, quite an impressive lineup, especially with this sort of ever-presently gazing over the action here. Okay, then this sort of does this weird pan over to another image. It's Mac, the mysterious alien creature, has selected. Oh, look how the Teddy's hat is in alignment with the antenna here as well. He selected just an area of the cartoon that produces a ton of these in a row, We could have selected some other area that doesn't have these properties. There are many funny images in this cartoon, but it's just this one that we get. Remember also the context of this cartoon. It's about anomalous results and magnetism. Oh, man. This is a weird movie. Okay, then we get this image, which is an interesting match, especially once we crop in on it. You can't really see it here. It's like a red microphone and a bow tie and a mustache. Now the toe makes an appearance. It's the same thing. It's like it's this kind of... And, again, it's just, here appears another character that we've already been instructed is a Logos resonator because of her appearance in the previous tableau in the correct location. And now here she is with a wristwatch and a whole bunch of lines and something that looks like this. See how it sits on the plate? It's the same outline as the weird hats. It's the hat plus the thing, which is also what we see on here. Which is also what we see here. That's what we see here. A fish, it's a bit like a plane. I guess it should go over here. Of course, here it's on the right side, but what is on the right side is the cooked element. The potatoes. Potato skin. I do find actually this image, which we've seen already, so we're repeating material here on the TV, but because of this, the white and the red here, it does start to constellate that way. And then it comes on again with basically with a portal, and then this, what I consider to be, you know, I think that's quite a strong match. It's what I was saying before. Once we get cropped in on it there, I find that really pretty. Pretty matched. It's supposed to be a snake. And then the way this happens, it's so perfectly sort of posed. It's weird. I find it weird. Well, okay. I think that was more or less what I wanted to get through. I think that we've done those areas pretty good justice for now. We'll have to sort of keep them in mind as we look at material that occurs further downstream. Okay, I guess this will cut now into last night's analysis. Like I said, it's pretty low-key, just kind of legwork, trying to build up to the next major stack structures. So, okay, talk to you later. Well, I had so much fun last time that I want to do another one. So let's do another 10 minutes in Sync Century time, which is like an hour to an hour and a half of Mac and Me. I love this Stargate portal here. I mean, I really find this pretty remarkable. Perfectly the thumbs are posed. I just find it, sorry, just, well, actually we'll just talk sort of as it goes here. That, in a location where we get, I don't know, I didn't do a strict count there. Maybe in the edit I'll actually try to throw up the material. But, you know, many-handed matches with the weird seahorse thing. We get just some number of those all in a row. And in these holographic or fractal alignments with things that have been happening in the bedroom. And as the character is viewing that stuff, first of all, they're seeing it explicitly on a TV, which I find quite interesting. But then it's a TV that's unplugged from the wall, and his response to that is to kind of keep plugging it in and unplugging it and plugging it in and unplugging it. So it's an impossible image that shouldn't be there, but somehow is there, and he can't believe it either. But then we can't believe it in the context of the Red Twins constellation. There's a moment where it seems like the constellation is almost aware of itself, talking about itself in some funny way, I think. My tendency is to read all of this stuff in the context of chasing one's own unconscious in some funny way. You know, it's very predictable. Here's his outline on a mirror, of course. A mirror means it's a reflection, so that's quite like the unconscious. So there's all kinds of visual material here. I haven't looked closely at this kind of stuff. Chicago something. I don't know anything about sports, sadly. Speakers. It's a strange little... doll there. What's that say? I can't quite make it out. Yeah, it's strange. I'm just noting these three... They do kind of have three fingers, right? Well, then there's this weird thing with this W logo later on, this thing they make with their hands. I feel like there's some strange structure there with that E11 thing, and then we're on channel 3. We have 3 Uniteds. This stuff is just everywhere. United, United, United. The fact that we see that thing coming out of the brother's head that says Union. Opens that side of it. Some text over here. Small. Feet. 3 stripes again. And then we just have this sort of waterfall of red cups in basically 2 lines. Yeah, pretty much. So it's almost like a strange red twins encounter there. Pretty much anything Eric interacts with, he's a potential North Tower resonator. The interesting thing about him is he could be North Tower or South Tower, because there's a lot of aluminum elements, spokes and so on, and all of this on his chair. But then he's also a kid, so works in the atomic kid for projection space. I find these to be somewhat interesting objects here. Metal pots. What's this thing here? Quite sure what that is. There's some kind of a design element repeated there. You know, I can't help but note these things. And a rectangle thing. I know, it's a window. Windows just tend to be shaped that way, of course. But after such incredible, weird object groupings, I tend to read adjacent things in the vortex of that. Kind of can't help it. This is a very lengthy sequence. So it leads him to the greenery. And here the neighbor who communes with the earth spirits is watching.
He's my brother. You'll be an interesting addition.
Because it's a red animal, I do find that atomic kid resonant, which makes me want to read that feather as a South Tower, or excuse me, as a North Tower. And that becomes South Tower.
What's your name? Earth. I'm Debbie. This
Debbie.
is my sister, Courtney. Hi.
Okay, off they go.
Just go downhill.
I really am noticing an awful emphasis on the number 3 in this film. A lot of it is coming from these boxes, because this is just such a repetitive element in all of these shots, but I'm noticing it elsewhere too. And, you know, the aliens really do have 3 fingers plus a thumb, and all that weird material does happen on Channel 3. You know, it's just really funny, that whole weird... Sorry, just thinking back to that scene. It's like, what exactly is supposed to be happening there in the context of the movie? You know? It's like by which I mean the... I don't know. The normal fiction of the movie that we're supposed to understand. Like, a broadcast is coming into that TV in some way, well, not just a broadcast, but also, I mean, I guess mainly the power. Now, I don't know how much you know about old TVs, but they're made using something called a cathode ray tube, which is a hugely expensive component in terms of power consumption. It takes a lot of juice to power these old CRTs. Now we see that when Mac, well, in fact, sorry, he doesn't ever touch anything on that side. Yeah, all these touch things on this side, and when he touches them on this side, there's always this huge explosion because apparently 1.21 gigawatts are flowing through Mac's finger. What are we supposed to think, that kind of charges up the capacitors in this thing? I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense. And also, the image is behaving very funnily in there. You know, it's kind of scanning and tracking in a funny way. And it's like repeating that scene many times. Like, I'm pretty sure, like it's on a weird little loop there. So is that like an image that Mac has selected? Like, what is Mac up to? You know, our first real introduction to him having any kind of a subjective impression of anything is him staring through the blinds at a building with a red top. Then he's very interested in that portrait where he identifies the Logo's father, maybe, but I think maybe the glasses in particular, because it occurs in time with, I guess, Ben, maybe is the name of the brother, having his, like, they live, I can see the unconscious now, glasses metaphor experience. I don't know, man. There are just weird connections running through this movie, though. He says ghost, right? So I really think there's something more going on with Mac than just being an alien. Even in the sort of the mundane level of this film, you know. This shot of the moon exists purely because the moon was an iconic image in E.T., you know? I would say this is very nightmarish at this speed. What is that even? Kind of toy, maybe? We're tracking it pretty closely, whatever it is. It looks like some comic books there, maybe? Next to a barbecue. There's no way I can turn it off. So, I do notice here that we have a fireplace on this side and metal tools on this side. I do think it's pretty significant how much time Max spends unseen in the background. You know, they really play this up. It's just a lot now. You'd think someone would have noticed this alien by now, but no, he really lives in the background looking on sort of forlornly, like he's excluded almost. And, again, just noting strange groupings here. She is again with more clocks. Underscoring her relation to Logos here. Here we seem to have people in funny hats, right? So books is more speech Logos oriented stuff. And then that's the fireplace probably, right? Probably says Dreamin', California Dreamin', Eric Avenue, Bubblegum. I think these are candidates maybe for strange gematria things. I might run that later. Can't make out that poster at the moment. Okay, what are the things that surround the bed? Can't quite make that out. Polar bear, that's interesting. Very interested in this figure. It's like some kind of a troll, maybe? Maybe it's some kind of a witch. It's interesting because it's a very kind of shadowy figure, but then it's holding the light, although it's positioned kind of immediately behind the light in the blind spot, as it were. Maybe that's another unconscious resonator. That's this incredible picture again. What's that picture? Don't know. Maybe we'll get better angles on this stuff. So what's going on in the narrative here, right, is Eric is still bothered by these strange experiences with the television set.
Did you lock all the windows?
Again, more of Mac watching from the outside, looking in. So this is a strange tuning procedure or something that the Macs do. I feel like we're in a Madonna music video now.
You only see what your eyes want to see. How can life be what you want it to be? You're frozen when your heart's not open. You're so consumed with how much
Right, so here's this strange
you
gesture
waste
they
your
do.
time with hate and regret. You're broken when your heart's not open.
It's an amazing image, but and like a weirdly religious image, but can you imagine like being the director, filming this thing, framing it, setting up these shots, lighting it, like pulling the focus, like all of this, and somehow during that entire process never thinking like, wow, this looks horrendous and everybody's gonna make fun of this movie like forever. So this is some kind of an image up here. Well, his head's in the way now, but it's some kind of an image of people looking at a TV. from the POV of the TV, I think. Okay, so we have it. So this is a funny thing because before Eric was steering this car around, and now Mac is steering around. Yeah, right, because this is like a bed. And then that's a TV with the two antenna coming out of it. Oh, it's 11. I mean, I started late, but I should wrap up soon. This continued emphasis on 3 is very interesting, though, and there continue to be just very interesting objects floating around. Really, what are these things? These cards? I'm pretty interested in those. Aha, they're garbage pail kids, right? I think that's what those are. A bunch of interesting numbers next to a TV here. Wonder if anything intriguing exists there, or if it's just a red herring. Like a floral pattern down here. It's like popping a wheelie. Get a much closer look at this thing. Well, okay. I'm actually really tired. I'm dozing off slightly as I watch this, so okay, I think that's enough for today. Well, we made a little bit more progress. We're ending exactly at 27 and 37 seconds. Made a little bit of progress through the film. Let's take a little peek at what's coming next here. All right, we have this weirdness with the drill. Mac kind of rearranges the house, which freaks Mom out. We have this whole kind of weird baptism thing. The encounter with the doctor. Whole bunch of stuff. This. There's some interesting material here again, finally. It takes a little while to pick up back into sort of interesting matching material and so on. Maybe we'll find some interesting things hidden in these other areas as well. In any case, we'll do that at a later period of time. Until that point in time, take care of yourselves and see you in the future. Bye.